Hello everyone, so this is my first video tutorials on Depence². I have someone that asked me how I use cameras in timeline view, so here's my video today. When I started using Depence², I followed the little tutorials and I discovered that using one line of cameras in my timeline was a bit complicated when I was trying to switch from different point of views and doing transitions. So first thing you have to do when you're on Depence is to add a camera on your hierarchy by the section Add Camera, or else you can always go through Objects and Camera right here. Once you've done this camera, you go in your Project View Camera Options, Scene Camera, and you choose Camera 1. So you can see what the camera is shooting. Last thing I use is I go into Settings of the Project View and I click on Show Aspect Borders, which will gray out all the parts of the image that isn't going to be rendered in the video renderer. First things first, I go into Sequence. I create myself a show, an empty show file, which is already created. I'm going to add the camera on the timeline. That's a new feature on the last update. You can directly drag your elements from your hierarchy into the sequencer, so that's quite cool. I'm going to start by doing the first point, let's say far end field. I'm going to record it with the red button, knowing that if you just click on the red buttons of, for example, position, it's going to just record the keyframe for position. If you use the main button, it's going to record all keyframes that are visible. So I'm going to go a bit further into my timeline. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to record another section. So you have a beautiful transition from point A to point B. A bit further, I'm going to do a close-up on the singer, let's say, right here. Here we go. And I want this keyframe to become a switch. It means with no video transition from point B to point C. So when you click on it, in the settings, you can choose its different curves, and there's actually one that's called switch right here, which makes you do a transition and after switch camera views. Last keyframe I'm going to do right now is going to be, for example, just doing a rotation around the singer. Here we go. Saving it. And so once I do once I switch to my singer, the rotation, you see she goes out of the field. It's not a beautiful transition from point C to point D. And you actually see it in the CAD view. If I go onto top view right here, you see that it actually takes a sort of a strange curve between my points C and point D. And actually, since I've got all those points, you even see that from point A to point B, there's a new curve that appeared, and it's not a linear transfer, you know. That's why when you use several keyframes in one camera line, all the points are connected and interact with each other. That's why you see if I move this one right here, the original one, it moves all the trail and creates this sort of vertex. So that was really upsetting for me at the beginning because it was really hard to do my transitions. And I found a little solution thanks to a friend of mine. It's to actually use several lines for the cameras to have a better control of each steps. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to delete what we just done here, and import a new camera in the timeline. Let's go back on project view. I'm gonna go here in my, here we go, main view right here. Didn't do that correctly. Here we go. Let's say we'll start right here. So I'm gonna save that point. Gonna go a bit further in the timeline. Just gonna do a zoom in, record the point of view, and we have this transition. In the CAD view, you actually see it does a straight line. That's what I wanted to do. I can always correct it a tiny bit if ever I need to. I can always move the points. So the CAD view can be quite useful. Now, to do the same thing as we did earlier, I want to do now a close-up on the singer. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to just minimize those. Add a new camera, the same camera actually. I'm just sliding it again onto the timeline view. So this camera right here, when I click on it, it actually always creates a first step on the timeline. That step is gonna, if you do several camera lines and you do not delete this first step, it's gonna be in conflict with the first, the other lines you have. So first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna delete that step that it automatically created. I'm gonna set myself onto the lead singer. Here we go. And I'm gonna create a point right here. A bit further in the timeline, I'm gonna do this rotation. Here we go. I'm gonna do a rotation around the singer. Here we go. Record it here, and you have this beautiful rotation around the singer. So now in CAD view, what you see is actually that when you're on this camera line with on the perfect timeline, you see the first transition going on right here, and after, when you switch to the second one, you see that you have a separate line with a separate path for the camera. And by building several lines for each different path you have to do, it's much easier to take care of editing your video shoots. Last one, I'm gonna just try that one out. I'm gonna go, for example, overhead here. I'm gonna record point of view. Click twice, always. Delete this famous step that's annoying. Actually, you see that from this line and this line, there's no conflict. Here, there's a big conflict between this one and this one. So, always delete the first steps, or else you're going to be having quite a few bugs. Always move your timeline before, of course. Unzoom a tiny bit right here. Record. Here we go. And so now, you can always move your points backwards and forwards. And so now you have a beautiful edited video with a much better control of the parameters. And you don't have to go through the settings and using the switch option. So that I find quite nice. Since the last update, they added new features to the cameras, which are all the field of view options. So since that update, they added this little button here that looks like the mouse cursor. Actually, when you're on this line and you click on the button, the only thing it does is it opens the settings of the chosen camera. So it opened up my camera 1, which is this one here, and you see those new options right here. I'm not really a video guy. I try to work it a little tiny bit. Actually, if you have a few times a bit of time to look at videos about apertures and stuff, it's really interesting. But you can actually choose any aperture you need as if you were really using real cameras. You have this depth of field button. While the depth of field button isn't activated, the camera works like in the previous update of Depence. Once you activate this one here, all those parameters will be taken into account. The field of view is the opening of the view of your camera. You can actually see it. How can I show you this? Let's just say, here we go. I'm gonna go right here on this lady here, and if I put it in perspective, here we go. So you see the camera right here that has its point of view right here. If you reduce the field of view, it's going to reduce the opening of the zoom, let's say. The film size, I really don't know what it's used for. I'm still discovering it. And the focus distance right here will take care of the focus. For example, here we're on the singer, everything's blurred out, and if I find the correct settings here we go. You get the singer that's really nice, and the background that is blurred out, so you can work with all those kinds of field of view informations. And the number of blades is a parameter that's going to work on how the blurred out parameters reflections work. Play with it; it's a bit hard to explain. If in the timeline you want to work on focus points and so on, they're not by default shown in the timeline view. So what we worked on earlier today, it was this zoom in information with the rotation and the zoom out. Since I activated the depth of field now, I've got to work with all those parameters. So first things you're going to do is actually to right-click on the camera here, and there's an option called Add Keyframe Properties, and you can work on your focus distance right here, and you have a new line that appeared. Knowing that actually those lines focus, for example, the focus distance line I just added. Previously, we recorded keyframes with our positions and stuff. Since it wasn't in the timeline when we did it, it didn't record any keyframes in the timeline. So you can, for example, work with depth of field off, do all your positions correctly, and after in a second time, work on focus distances. Other possibility is to, for example, do those three lines for the positions of the cameras and add a new line that's only used for focus distancing, and depends on how you want to work it out. Now that I activated the focus distance on those three camera lines, I can go back on my keyframes, find with this button here the good focus distance to get a nice and crisp image. So here we go. Hey, maybe let's find a nice point of view we're looking for. Here we go. Here we go. For example, this one here, I'm going to record that point, that focus point. Hey, it didn't record it, actually. What did it do? Let's choose this one. Delete it here. Let's do it again. Focus distance, let's say 3000. Here we go. record that one here. And actually, hey, that's what the thing is. I recorded actually the good information right here, but since they have other keyframes of the other lines, it creates the famous conflict I was explaining a bit earlier today. So make sure you delete all of those. Here we go, perfect. All those conflictual keyframes. Let's say on this keyframe here, the image isn't crisp enough, so same thing. Bring down the field of view. I don't know, the focus distance, maybe 2000. Well, I'd say, yeah, we get a sort of a nice zoom to on this lady. Maybe give it a bit of notch more, maybe 2000. Here we go. And it's after you just get to try it out, find the perfect focus distance you want. And now I recorded this new focus distance, so it's gonna change on each one I want. Let's say we're here on this point of view. Same exercise, focus distance. This will be a bit smaller, maybe 200. Yeah, perfect. Twitch it up a little bit. Found that one here. Record my point of view, my focus point here. Then the rotation. Find another point. Maybe you'll need a mid-distance one. So select it again. Find a good focus distance. Here we go. No. And when you get to this one here, here we go. And so replaying it will show you all the focus distancing set up. Okay, we still have work to be done, but at least you can work out now with camera positions and focus distancing. So yeah, what I suggest is actually to do a separate line for focus distance. It's much easier, and keep separate lines for the different camera positions and paths. That's a bit it about cameras today. Always note that you can always put them in a folder afterwards in your timeline called cameras right here, and cite them in if you want to tidy up your show file, because when you have 4 minutes of video, you start having a lot of lines. So that's the end of my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have any questions, ask me on Facebook, and I'll try to answer your questions. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.